Hello guys, this is your fanfic dojo and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Fell in Love with Tamari Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfic. Walking to class was somewhat of a chore for Naruto. It seems that people had heard of his speech to his students and the results were mixed. Most of the ones who he assumed were parents, or people who were the age of the parents of his students, gave him dirty looks. The older folks and ranked ninja gave him appreciative looks. Apparently, being spontaneous and brash was a double-edged sword when it came to teaching. At least they didn't outright hate him. Walking peacefully was another new experience to him. In fact, most greeted him or gave him a polite nod. Having the cage as a friend was a good benefit apparently. He thought back to the night before and Tamari. She had smiled at him more than she usually did and had destroyed his dessert with passion, even growling at Gaara when he tried to take the last piece. Naruto smiled in spite of himself. It wasn't every day you saw Gaara startled like that. He stepped into the school and greeted everyone he met with a smile. One of his fellow teachers walked up to him and stuck out her hand. Hello there. I'm Urameshi Kari. My class is the one down from yours. I have to say, your little demonstration yesterday was quite a shocker. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, Urameshi-san? Kari, please, and that's a good thing. It's nice to have a teacher that the students actually look up to and don't disrespect. Look up to? Hey, if they look up to me, they don't know me yet. My students will hate me by the time I'm through with them. Why's that? Because of the regimen I'm going to put them through. I'm sorry to cut our conversation short, Kari-san, but I have to get to class and so do you. I look forward to speaking with you again. Kari watched as he paced on down the hall, the heels of his shoes thumping against the wooden floor. Interesting guy. Naruto walked into his classroom and took up his position at the desk again. He was pleasantly surprised to see that all his students had shown back up. They were indeed a surprising bunch. He'd expected at least 4 or 5 to not come back. He smiled at them and walked to the blackboard. Good morning, class. In unison, they all chanted, "Good morning, Naruto-sensei." His smile grew a little wider. Naruto-sensei. Yeah, he liked the sound of that. He faced them again and put his hands behind his back. Now do you all remember what I spoke of yesterday? Good, good. Today will be our first official day of training. I will be with all of you and will do an assessment of your skills. But first, let's all go outside. Follow me. Opening the door, he turned to see them still in their seats and raised an eyebrow in annoyance. Move your lazy asses and get outside. They all squeaked and flew past him. Chuckling to himself, he followed them out and found them in a line, facing the building. Ah, excellent form. I'm glad that you all know how to stand at attention. Now, to begin, you're all going to do 5 laps around Suna. Once you're done, we'll begin with a few light calisthenics and then you'll sit as I lecture on a topic. Once I'm finished, and it'll be brief since I hate to sit still, we'll begin working with each of you individually. This will be our regimen for the mornings. Now let's go. Follow me. He heard little to no grumbling as he jogged away. That was good. It seemed that these kids took him seriously. He smirked as he led them on their run around the village, which he was sure would wear them all out. What they didn't know was that their training had already begun. This was to build their endurance. The light calisthenics when they got back were to stretch their bodies out before they got into the heavy stuff. The lecture was because he hated to read textbooks. If his former senseis had only used the approach he was going to use, he wouldn't have been half as pathetic as he had been. After about 2 hours, their run was through. Many students looked about ready to collapse, but Naruto was proud to see a gleam in their eyes, a look that was filled with determination. He led them through some jumping jacks and stretches and then had them sit in a semicircle around him as he began that morning's lecture. Now I'm sure most of you are tired and you rightfully should be. Just remember that all of you are 8 years old and are a beginning class. The fact that none of you dropped out of our run speaks wonders about you. I'm proud of all of you. As we go on in the years to come, it will grow easier and we will set new goals to supersede those we have surpassed. I want you to listen carefully as I explain something to you. Despite their tiredness, he was pleased to see them all lean eagerly in for his lesson. Do all of you remember what I told you about shinobi being emotionless tools yesterday? Good. You all remember. I don't believe that, not one bit. Emotions can help you in a fight as much as hinder you. It's simply a matter of knowing when to use them. Anger can blind you, but it can also help you gain strength to win. Sadness can burden you, but it can also drive you to succeed. Do not forsake your emotions, for that is folly. I, myself, am a very emotional person. I seem to be driven by them. But I use them to my advantage. Tell me, class, what makes a person strong? The answers ranged from ninjutsu to muscles and Naruto sighed in annoyance. That is a typical answer. It's true that those things can make you stronger. But they will never allow you to break the glass ceiling and become a great ninja like emotions can. The truth to gaining strength, the real truth, is that to become strong you must protect your precious people. When they are in danger, you can overcome any obstacle to save them. I was told this by a very wise person, who died before their time. I took his words to heart and hold them closely to this day. Naruto-sensei, who was this person? Naruto smiled sadly and looked toward the scorching sun. He was my first friend, someone who I could identify with. His name was Haku and he was the apprentice of the demon of the bloody mist, Momochi Zabuza. Haku was a kind, gentle soul and loved his master greatly. He would have done anything to help him achieve his dream and that is what made him strong. But even great ninja fall prey to emotion and in the end, even though we were enemies, he couldn't kill me. His heart was too soft, too kind. And yet, he got strong because of Zabuza. Haku was a child thrown away. He came from Mist, where bloodlines were despised and anyone who had one was killed. His mother was from a clan whose line allowed them to manipulate ice. His father killed his mother and then tried to kill him, but Haku slaughtered his father in a moment of panic. He wasn't wanted. Then Zabuza found him, and wanted him for the very thing that everyone else hated him for. Zabuza was not a good man, but he took in an urchin and nurtured him, fed him, clothed him, gave him a purpose. He was precious to Haku, even if it was only for those reasons. With him Haku felt wanted. That's not to say Zabuza loved him. Haku was a tool to him, that's what he told Haku and himself. But deep inside, Haku was the son he never had and it pained him to see Haku die. The day Haku died, snow fell in a land that had never seen snow and Zabuza died, wishing with all his heart to see the boy in the next life. I hope he made it there. I hope those two are together and I hope they are happy. Purity. That's what Haku was, pure as the snow and with the snow came a pure start for a country on the brink of decline. Naruto looked at his students and sniffed. I hope you all take Haku's words to heart. Shinobi are not gods, we are men and women, flesh and blood, and we take life and we give life. We love and we hate, we kill and we protect. But never forget that to become strong, you must protect those precious to you. If you aren't strong enough to defeat someone, then it's because you haven't found someone precious enough to you yet. When you go home today, I want you to think about who is precious to you. Tell those people you love them every day, because as a ninja, you never know when your last day will be. Think of those you will leave behind and honor them every day. I'm an orphan. I had no one until I was nearly 12 years old. But here, in Suna, I hope to forge a loving relationship with someone. I want to find precious people here. I have 3 already, but I want more. Love is meant to be spread, hatred is meant to be contained. Never take your life for granted. This is the lesson for today. Think about your goals as a ninja and before that goal, Make this your golden rule. Protect those precious to you. If you do that, you will never fail, no matter what you do. And you will all be splendid shinobi. Naruto looked out over his students and saw that they were all deep in thought. He couldn't believe how good teaching felt. It made his heart swell to know that he was molding these children, that his teachings would guide them in life. Clapping his hands to get their attention, he summoned enough clones so that each child had one. Today we will work and see where your chakra control is. Once that is found, we will begin exercises to build up your reserves. We'll work on taijutsu tomorrow. I'm not the best at genjutsu, but I'll find a genjutsu specialist and we'll have them help us. Now then, let's split up. The children all picked a clone and spread out. Some were passable with chakra control, while others were abysmal. A couple actually had rather decent control, but he chalked that up to small reserves. Once it was found where their control level was, Naruto called them all back. The kids stood in a line, awaiting further orders. You'll be happy to know we're going back inside for this. We don't have the necessary area to work out here. Now follow me back inside. Once back inside, Naruto turned to the children. Now we're going to work on your control. You're going to climb these walls, with no hands. Many children looked at him like he was stupid and a couple scoffed. Naruto threw his head back and laughed. Don't worry, that was my reaction to this as well. I started on trees, but unfortunately, we don't have that luxury, at least not yet. Perhaps I can do something about that in the future. For now, watch me. The students watched in awe as he walked up the wall and then across the ceiling, standing above them, looking down. This will both help build your chakra reserves and build your control. Now then, to avoid any holes in the wall, I want you all to lay on the floor and put your feet on the wall. There won't be any running starts, so you'll have to concentrate. Focus the chakra to the bottom of your feet and place your foot on the wall. When you think you have it, gently place your foot on the wall and see what happens. If you feel it begin to stick, and you will feel it, then put more weight on that foot and concentrate on the other while maintaining that level of chakra output. Try to match it in the foot not stuck to the wall and continue onward. The object is to get at least halfway up the wall today. If you can't, don't worry. I'll help you. The children all lay down and as expected, those with small reserves made it up within several minutes. They could not, however, maintain it for long before flipping to the floor and lying down again. The ones with bad control struggled. They would put a foot on the wall and test, but couldn't seem to get the right level. The clones stood over them, encouraging and giving instructions. As lunchtime rolled around, every student was able to at least get off the floor. They looked discouraged, but as the clones poofed away, Naruto eased their fears. Don't worry about getting it on the first day. I didn't learn this until after I was a genin. It's not something that most people learn until later. I want you guys prepared though. Go to lunch and after you come back, we'll start on another lesson. Be back in an hour. Naruto walked into Gaara's office just a few minutes past noon and saw that the redhead had a table against the wall laden with fruits and meats. Drooling from the mouth, he headed towards the table only to have a wall of sand appear in front of him. It's rude not to announce that you're here before diving in. Fine. I'm here. Can I please eat now? I'm starving. Look at me. I'm wasting away. I highly doubt that. Bring me a plate over here when you come. I need to finish reading this document. Naruto piled the plates with as much meat and fruit as he could carry and made his way to Gaara's desk. He swept some documents out of the way and sat Gaara's plate down in front of him, receiving a grunt of appreciation. Or at least he thought it was appreciation. Munching happily on his meal, he waited for Gaara to finish before striking up a conversation. Grumbling under his breath, Gaara signed the paper with a flourish and put it in his outbox. He grabbed a slice of cantaloupe and sighed contentedly. So, how go things at the school? It's all right. The kids are uncommonly sedate and willing to learn. I don't understand it. Perhaps it was your little speech you gave them. You heard about that. Gaara nodded and reached for a slice of ham. From numerous sources, I'd say you scared the stupidity right out of them. That's a good thing though, so don't go getting mopey. It doesn't suit you. Well, I just hope I'm doing the right thing. Have any parents complained about me yet? 1. He's a grandfather and legal guardian of one of your students. He remembers me way back when I was still a bloodthirsty killer and doesn't like people like you or I. He's stuck in the past and wanted to pull his grandchild out. Of course, I told him where he could go if he didn't like it. He caved with little difficulty. You used your sand on him, didn't you? People should not be so foolish as to believe that just because I am young, that I am a pushover as cage. I don't take being told what to do very kindly, no matter if they are my elder or not. You still shouldn't threaten people, Gaara. It'll only reinforce his opinion of us. Gaara sighed and looked at his friend as he munched on some grapes. You're too kind for your own good, Naruto. It'll be the death of you someday. Perhaps. I'm sorry, Gaara, but I have to return to class. My clone says that the students returned earlier than I thought. Very well. I shall see you this evening perhaps, if my duties don't keep me here all night. All right. Later. As Naruto walked back to the classroom, he wondered what he could show these kids. He decided that starting with the basics was the best thing to do. Since he'd already made them do control exercises today, they should be able to do henge with no problem. Nodding to himself that that was indeed the correct path to follow, he walked inside to find his classroom in utter chaos. The children were talking and laughing amongst themselves loudly. He gritted his teeth. The clone had dismissed itself prematurely. Next time he'd leave 2 clones to avoid this. The kids never noticed as he smoothly glided to the desk and leaned against it, his arms folded against his chest. The more he listened to the pointless banter, the more irritated he became. He thought of using his former sensei's big head jutsu but decided to test the theory that Gaara had that these children actually respected him. As quietly as he could, he uttered 2 words. Be still. As if those were magic words, all the kids turned in their desks and faced forward. It was amazing, the power he held over these children. Only Konohamaru had listened to him with such rapture and attention. He coughed into his hand and looked over all of them. We'll begin with our last lesson of the day. You will all learn to perform henge. I will situate you each with a clone and it will show you the necessary seals to perform this jutsu. This is a rudimentary jutsu, as are all the academy graduating standards. However, henge and kawarimi can save your life if need be. They cost relatively little chakra and higher-level shinobi still use these E-class jutsu to this day. In fact, henge was my favorite technique for quite a while. Allow me to give you a demonstration. Naruto put his hands in the proper seal and transformed into Gaara. In the cage's monotone drawl, he explained the exercise. To complete the jutsu, to make it totally effective, it helps if you learn the mannerisms and voice of your preferred target for transformation. If you can replicate everything down to the tiniest twitch of a finger, only a genjutsu master or someone with a dojutsu could tell you weren't the real article. Now then, scatter out around the classroom and prepare to learn. The children were all assigned a clone and began to perform the necessary seals while Naruto sat at his desk and wrote some things down. These kids would become the model for what an academy student should be. He'd make sure of that. After nearly a half hour, one of his clones poofed out, signifying that a student had completed the jutsu. Naruto glanced up to the girl and motioned for her to come before his desk. So you've completed the exercise. Hi, sensei. Indeed. Perform the henge for me. Transform into me. The girl made the necessary seals and turned into a perfect copy of Naruto. He nodded and stood up, making his way around the desk. A few more examples and I'll assign you a new task. I want you to transform into what I do. The girl nodded her head and Naruto transformed into Gaara and she followed suit. He turned into Baki and she did that as well. He poofed into Temari and the girl did it mostly well, but the hair was slightly discolored. Naruto undid the illusion and sat back down in his chair. You have a high degree of control, but that is mostly due to low reserves. You performed very well, but when you turned into Tamari, you discolored her hair, signifying your chakra was nearly out. Do not perform any more jutsu for the rest of class and let your reserves fill back up. Help out the other students and learn from their mistakes. Watch what they do and give suggestions. Dismissed. The girl bowed and walked over to a boy who seemed to be struggling. Naruto's clone stepped back and watched the two. The boy seemed grateful for the extra help and soon was able to perform the just you with minimal difficulty. Naruto smiled at his students and continued with his paperwork. Soon, the day was over and Naruto called for the students to return to their seats. Many flopped down, breathing heavily while his clones dispelled. He walked around in front of the desk and leaned against it. Very good. You all did well today. I want you to go home and do as you please this evening with one exception. I want you to try to trick a family member by using the henge. If you can't perform the henge all that well, then practice with your control. Now then, get out of here. I have better things to do than stare at your ugly mugs. The students beamed at the praise and gave him a "Hi sensei" before leaving. Naruto shuffled his papers and made as if to leave when he saw the woman from that morning standing in the doorway, leaning against the jamb. He waved to her and said hello. You're quite the unorthodox one, aren't you, Naruto-san? I was walking by and saw the students all laid on the floor with a copy of you standing over them. Tell me, what were you doing? That's a trade secret. How is your class? My class is fine. They're coming along quite nicely, although they hate my lectures. They say history is boring. I agree. I gave my class a lecture on emotions and shinobi today. They actually seemed interested in what I had to say. It's quite an experience molding minds. Indeed. Well, I suppose I've kept you long enough. I shall see you tomorrow, I suppose. Good evening, Naruto-san. Goodbye, Kari-san. After another spectacular dinner, Naruto sat on the roof of the compound, staring out over the desert. He was lost in thought again, a strange occurrence considering who he was. He had been reading one of his father's scrolls on jutsus and was eager to try them, but between the academy and cooking for his housemates, he didn't have any time left. He sighed and looked up into the stars. He supposed even the stars could feel lost sometimes. He heard the crunch of a shoe behind him and didn't bother to turn around. Her scent carried on the wind. Hey Tamari, need something? She settled down beside him and pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. No, I don't need anything. I just wanted to see if you wanted some company. You've been unusually quiet lately. I've had a lot to think about lately. That's true. I don't think I've asked you yet how you like it here. I like it very much. It's less green than Konoha, but the people are nicer to me. Besides, if I can make it work, it'll be a lot greener around here someday. She looked at him like he had two heads. What does that mean? He gave her a foxy grin that showed his fangs. That's a secret. You'll be the first to find out though if it works, I promise. HMPH, everything's a secret with you. I heard about your teaching regimen today. Word gets out fast, huh? With those gossipy little brats of yours it does. They're all so excited to have a sensei that's not afraid to tell them the truth. Word around the campfire is that you have quite a few pairs of eyes on you, both professionally and otherwise. Naruto cocked an eyebrow and looked at her quizzically. What's that mean? She smirked at him and looked at the stars. That's a secret. Look who's being a hypocrite. You get onto me for being secretive and yet here you are keeping secrets. Sounds like a double standard to me. Well, you know the exchange for secrets. I'll tell mine if you tell yours. Nah, I can live without your secret. Besides, we'll both find out eventually what the other meant. Asshole. Ah, you love it. The two sat in relative silence for what seemed like forever. both marveling at how at ease they were around the other. Comfortable silence. Didn't someone say something about that sometime or other? Soon enough Tamari sighed and rested her chin on her arms. I have to go to Konoha tomorrow to give them our reports and get theirs. Anything you'd like me to tell the old lady? Just that I'm doing all right and that I miss her. If you see a one-armed pervert, tell him I miss him too. Temari laughed softly and turned her attention back to the desert. It looked so different at night, not at all the scalding, tortuous wasteland it was during the day. She looked over at her companion and took in his facial features. He'd grown since she last saw him again. He was taller and that baby fat was disappearing rapidly. He'd gotten more handsome, stronger too. Suddenly Kankuro's suggestion didn't sound so crazy. It might be fun to have a guy like Naruto as a boyfriend. He'd be a challenge to her, unafraid to bear her judgment and punishment. Hell, she'd bashed him over the head numerous times in the past days he'd stayed at the compound and he just brushed them off and kept picking with her. With that thought in mind, Tamari made a decision. She was the daughter of a former Kazekage, the sister of the current Kazekage, and one of the most powerful Junin in the military. Having a boy who wasn't afraid of her and was stronger than her as a boyfriend was a damn good idea. It was just a bonus that he was good looking and smarter than he let on. She jumped to her feet, the sudden motion startling Naruto. When he asked her what was wrong, she merely smiled down at him and held out her hand. He took it and she lifted him up. Say Naruto, you ever had a girlfriend? Taken aback by the abrupt question, he managed to stammer out a no. How about dates? Ever been on a date? Another no. Wanna go on one with me? If the boy was stuttering earlier, he was speechless now. A beautiful, deadly kunoichi asking him on a date. What alternate dimension had he stumbled into? Tamari took his silence as hesitation and growled, grabbing him by the shirt collar. Look Naruto, I'm the daughter of a Kazekage and the sister of the current one. I'm used to getting what I want and you're no exception. Now I want you to take me on a date and you're going to like it. This little proclamation snapped Naruto out of his muddled thoughts and brought back some of that bravado he was famous for. He narrowed his eyes and spoke in a haughty voice. And since when have I cared who someone was related to or what their name was? You don't scare me. Tamari smirked at him and let go of his collar. That's what I like about you Naruto, blunt and to the point. When I get back I expect you to take me out to dinner and a movie. And you can't be late since we live in the same house. It's brilliant. I don't believe I ever agreed to this little escapade. Temari's smirk grew wider, if that was possible, and sauntered over to him, her hips swinging seductively. Naruto gulped when her hand found its way to his cheek and pressed against his face as she fluttered her eyelashes. But Naruto, I wanted to go on a date with you. Please. Pretty please. She did a victory dance in her head when the poor boy nodded dumbly and she released the hold on his cheek, patting it a couple of times. See, that wasn't so hard now was it? You're a good guy Naruto and I expect to be treated like a queen. Naruto smiled and rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. He couldn't believe he let himself be suckered like that. Is there any other way to treat a lady? Tamari smiled softly before going back downstairs to her room. For your sake there better not be another way. You know what I'll do to you afterwards, and that's after I make you promise on a make-up date. She smiled sweetly while she gave her threat and walked downstairs to her bedroom. Naruto sighed in defeat and lay back again to stare at the stars. It seemed a few winked at him, as if they were laughing merrily at his predicament. He walked downstairs and was just about to open his door when Tamari poked her head out of hers. Oh, before I forget, you have to dress nice too. We're going to a really nice restaurant. Naruto started to protest before she shut the door and went back to sleep. He grimaced and opened his door, locking it behind him. As he lay down on the bed, he could have sworn he heard the puppet master next door snickering through his wall. Damned eavesdroppers. He picked up his mother's scroll on gardening again and smiled. If he could get a plot of land and the jutsu worked, he'd plant a lot of flowers. Wonder what Temari's favorite flower is. Naruto had begun the day by getting to the academy ahead of the students and watching as they filed in while he stood upside down on the ceiling. Being spontaneous as an instructor was pivotal to his approach. If he did the unexpected, his students would never be bored, always wondering what he was going to do next. With that in mind, he waited and watched as all his students faced the front, waiting for him to come in. Smiling at their willingness to learn, he cut off the chakra to his feet and dropped to the floor. To say the children were surprised to see their teacher fall from the sky was an understatement. Nex immediately cracked upwards to see where the hole in the roof was that he had come through. Not finding one, their eyes asked the unspoken question. Naruto chuckled and put his hands behind his back. Well then, good morning class. Good morning Naruto-sensei. Good to see you all. Did you all do your assignment last night? Heads nodded, indicating that most were able to pull it off. Some heads hung in defeat, since they hadn't managed to trick their families. Naruto scowled and clapped his hands. Now, we won't be having any heads hanging in my classroom. You're all beginners, and if you didn't do it the first time, keep trying until you do. I don't ask for anything other than you try. Now then, I'm going to make clones and I want you to show them that you can henge into at least 3 different shapes. If you have any trouble, they will assist you. He quickly made the clones and they began to watch the children. A couple struggled and were straightened out soon enough. The problem was either too much or too little chakra. Once their little problem was stomped out, Naruto clapped his hands and the class faced him again. Okay, we're going for our morning run now. Everyone outside and do 5 laps around the village. The children complied again and ran around the village. They finished their run and stood in a line, some puffing, some huffing, all tired. Naruto led them through their calisthenics and told them to sit. All right kiddies. Today, we're going to be doing taijutsu. Now, personally, I have no style. I'm a brawler by nature. I go in and I try to beat the crap out of the other guy. If I get hit, I get hit. But that's me. I'm going to be taking notes on you. I want you all to pick a partner and spar, light contact only. Many of you are from families of ninja and I'm sure you've been shown some form of martial art. Maybe soon, I can get an assistant that can help with taijutsu forms. We'll worry about that later though. Now, split up. The kids broke into pairs and began to spar, with a Naruto for each couple. This continued until lunchtime, when Naruto went to Gaara's office. It was quickly becoming a habit for the Jinchuriki. With lunchtime over, Naruto motioned for the kids to lie on the floor and try to walk up the wall again. The next day would be covering the hand seals. He'd only shown them how to make the henge, he hadn't shown them the seals and the proper usage of them. He'd rectify that tomorrow. He sighed and looked out over his students. I wonder how Tamari is doing. Said Kunoichi had finally arrived in Konoha and was walking to the Hokage's office. Konoha was no longer one of her favorite places. This was a village that had turned its back on one of her most treasured people. Naruto was a savior to the people of Suna. He had done so much for Gaara and had asked for nothing in return. The people of Suna, well most of them, treated him like a hero. Here in Konoha, he was a reminder of the past, a reviled thing no matter what he did. Hell, Gaara had killed people, his own people, in the past and the citizens of Suna mostly forgave him. Tamari nodded absent-mindedly to the people as she passed. Her thoughts weren't with Konoha at the moment. A sudden realization made her cringe. She'd have to meet all of Naruto's friends at some point and the only ones she didn't mind were that Hyuga girl and Shikamaru. The thought of the lazy Chunin brought a smirk to her face. To think she used to have a small crush on the lazy ass. She sighed as she came before the door of the Hokage Tower. She wasn't looking forward to this. Tsunade had been worried ever since Naruto left. She'd been so relieved when she received Gaara's note that he had arrived safely, but had yet to hear anything else about her favorite blonde. He'd been gone a little over 2 weeks and she was already tired of her job. She hadn't realized how much the boy made her appreciate what she did. His desire to be in her position made her continue on every day. Without him there to prod her though, she simply didn't have the drive or motivation. Perhaps it was time to pass it on to someone else. She laid her head on her desk and sighed heavily. Maybe she could move to Suna too. Tamari opened the door after receiving the okay from Shizune. She had been expecting Tsunade to be asleep, as she'd found her like that several times. She was not expecting to find a depressed woman sighing into the veneer of her table. Tamari coughed into her hand and shut the door behind her. Tsunade raised her head off the desk, her vision obscured by a paper stuck to her forehead. She growled and grabbed the offending object, balling it up and throwing it across the room. Tamari smiled at her childishness and took a seat. Come now Tsunade-sama, did the paperwork really deserve that? Tsunade glared at the kunoichi in front of her, trying to melt her head with her stare. She hadn't wanted to be disturbed by anyone and had thought she had told Shizune that. It was then that it dawned on her that Tamari could give her an update on Naruto. Her face lit up and she smiled at Tamari, slightly frightening the other blonde due to the mood swing. How is Naruto? Is he doing all right? How's Suna taking him? He hasn't done anything stupid, has he? Tamari sat there dumbfounded for a moment. She'd known that the Hokage liked Naruto, but to the extent of wanting to talk to him above diplomacy. Who'd have thought? Don't you believe that we should talk about business first, Tsunade-sama? Screw business. I want to know how Naruto is doing. I could care less if this village burned to the ground at the moment. Tamari gasped and looked hard at the older woman. Tsunade-sama, that is most improper for one of your station. Tsunade sighed and leaned back in her chair. Tamari, please, just tell me how he's doing. Tamari smirked and suppressed a giggle. She couldn't wait to tell the old bat this. We have him teaching at the academy. Silence. Total silence. Silence from Tsunade. Silence from an eavesdropping Shizune. Silence from the hidden Anbu in the corner. The only thought going through the three's mind at the moment was, what the hell are you all thinking? You can't put him with children. He'll have them all being perverted within a month. Tamari snorted and crossed her legs. Oh please Tsunade-sama, you don't believe that. Besides, believe it or not, he's actually an excellent teacher. He's even got the brats working on walking up walls as we speak. The second day he taught them all henge. And the lectures he gives, if I'd had him as a teacher, I'd have wanted to go to school every day. Tsunade sat back, thoroughly confused. Lectures? Naruto? No way in hell. He's way too impatient to talk about any subject for too long. It's true. In fact, he's really passionate about things. He burned all the class history books the first day. Said if they wanted to learn about history, do it on their own time. He'd be teaching them how to be ninja. His first lecture was on emotions and the use of them in battle and life. Tsunade sat there, a disbelieving look on her face. Finally, after many stone-faced moments, she called for Shizune. The brunette peeked in cautiously and asked what she wanted. I want you to gather all Naruto's friends, the council, and the Junin senseis. If this is true, then they have to hear this. Besides, this way Tamari won't have to repeat it a billion times. Tamari smiled at the older woman's deviousness. This wasn't for Temari's benefit, it was for Tsunade's. This was her way of rubbing it in their faces that they had made a damn fine man an outcast amongst his peers and had driven him away from his home village to a place where he was appreciated. To a village where the children looked up to and respected him. He'd been in Suna less than 2 weeks and already was becoming quite the talk-about subject. Almost immediately, Jiraiya had appeared. If something was said about his apprentice, then by God, he was going to hear it. Tamari watched as they all filed in, the young, the old, the teachers, the detractors, and the friends. They all lined against the wall and suddenly, she felt vulnerable. She was about to talk about a boy that she only knew in passing before and as a friend and housemate now. In truth, she knew very little about the mystery that was Uzumaki Naruto, but she wanted to know. Oh, how she wanted to know. She smiled inside her mind. Now, she'd have all the time in the world. She faced the Hokage when the older woman coughed into her hand. Now then, Tamari, let's begin again. What is Naruto's capacity in Suna? This ought to be good for a few laughs, thought Tsunade. Naruto's capacity is that of a Chunin school teacher. A cricket would not have dared to break the silence that permeated the air in that office. Not until one Nara Shikamaru snorted and gave his opinion in his usual slow drawl. Uzumaki Naruto, a teacher. Fit. That'll be the day. Now what does he really do? Shikamaru, he really is a teacher, and from what I've seen, he's one of the best we've ever had. The kids love him. Shikamaru knew then that it wasn't a lie, it wasn't a joke. Tamari was simply incapable of delivering a joke when in the presence of so many important people. She was all business, although her eyes held a mirthful glint, like she was enjoying this. So troublesome. Ahem, now that we have that out of the way. Tamari, continue with your analysis. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto is coming along nicely from what I've seen. The people of Suna have taken to him very well, and so have his students. He gave them a lecture the first day about the dangers of being a ninja and gave them a chance to wait for another teacher. All of the students were back the next day. He's currently teaching them the basic ninja techniques and advanced chakra control. Sakura spoke up when chakra control was mentioned. That wasn't Naruto's strong suit. What do you mean by advanced? How old are his students? He's teaching them to walk up walls. And they're 8. He has a beginning class. This caused a slight uproar among those present, particularly the council. How could the people of Suna let that boy teach their children? He wasn't fit to do anything but missions. Even his friends seemed to doubt his abilities. Temari and Tsunade were fast becoming sick of it. Enough. Quiet down, all of you. Continue, Temari. Naruto is a teacher and he's a damn fine one. I believe that his crop of genin will be some of the best to ever come out of the academy. His teaching style is just as unorthodox as he is, and he has the full support of my brother. But enough about his job. You're all here to find out how he is doing as a citizen, no doubt. Naruto currently lives in my family's compound with me and Kankuro. He's trying to find a plot of land though, to build a house for himself. The guy currently is the resident cook for me and my brothers. A deadpan look was her answer. Shizune, who had seen the boy's eating habits, decided to speak up. Cooking. Cooking was never one of Naruto's strong points. Well, I'd love to see him make it a strong point, because what he cooks is goddamn delicious. The desserts, oh my god, the cakes. If relationships were built solely off sweets, I'd have married that boy a long time ago. Tsunade snorted and tried to hold back her laughter. Seeing a strong Junin like Tamari about to wet herself over cake was quite a sight indeed. Tamari looked startled, and blushed prettily before continuing with her assessment. Yes, well, anyway, he's quite a guy. All he does, besides teaching, is study and try to find new methods of helping the students. Homura stepped forward and harumphed into his hand. Tsunade still hadn't forgiven the old fart for running her Naruto off. If it weren't for him and the rest of the council, her favorite blonde would still be causing mischief in Konoha instead of teaching brats in Suna. Hell, he could have done that here. Tell me, Tamari-san, what is your opinion of Uzumaki Naruto? A personal opinion, not a professional one. Tamari sat and thought for a moment. As stated before, she didn't know much of Naruto, except that he was strong, kind, and was her brother's best friend. But she would get to know him better. She turned and flashed the group behind her a grin. I just know he's Naruto. I'll tell you more after my date with him. Several of the kunoichi in the room nearly cried out in protest. The guys all sat in disbelief, Shikamaru chief among them. Tsunade and Jiraiya seemed to get the most satisfaction out of the situation. Kakashi had a discernible look on his face, but from the mask or complete apathy, Tamari couldn't tell. Hinata looked as if she was about to cry and Sakura looked despondent and slightly angry. Well, from what Tamari had heard, the Pinkett had had more than enough chances and the Hyuga was just too shy to act on hers. Too bad for them. Their loss, her gain. I think that is all I will tell you of Naruto for the time being. There is no need to tell you anything else other than he seems to be flourishing in Suna. That's all. Tsunade, seeing that she would get nothing else out of the girl in front of the crowd, dismissed them with a wave of her hand. Many left grumbling, dissatisfied with the explanation they had been given. Hinata approached Tamari before she left and bowed to the blonde. Please take care of Naruto-kun. He deserves to be happy. She left without a look back, leaving a stunned Tsunade and Tamari. The girl never showed initiative in anything, so that show of concern for Naruto, in public no less, was something new. Still, it was refreshing to Tamari to see that some were actually concerned about her housemate and weren't indifferent or outright hostile. She turned back to the Hokage with a smile on her face. Do you think my answers were satisfactory for them? Not in the least. Now, you're going to tell Jiraiya and me what he's actually been up to. I know that was the abridged version. Temari spent the rest of the evening telling the two Sannin what their younger counterpart was up to. They laughed at her stories about mealtime at the compound and silently praised Naruto for trying to make ninja instead of genin. Tsunade was not happy about his desire to pass on his Kage Bunshin, but didn't think he would in the end anyway. Academy students simply didn't have the chakra capacity for the jutsu. Jiraiya was quite proud of his student and made a point in his mind to visit him soon to see the fledgling teacher for himself. That would be a hell of a sight, Naruto preaching about ninja code and jutsus to a bunch of starry-eyed brats. He snickered under his breath, making the two blondes face him, wondering what the hell he was laughing about. He waved his hand dismissively. I was just imagining Naruto as a teacher. It still makes me laugh since he wasn't exactly a model academy student. Tsunade chuckled as well, but Tamari frowned. Didn't these people have any faith in Naruto? Seriously, he wasn't a bad teacher. Don't laugh at him. He's actually a really good teacher and the kids respect him, which doesn't happen often in academies. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow and smirked at the girl. Oh, getting mighty defensive of my student, aren't you? I happen to know that he's a moron, and as for your motion that he can cook, I sure as hell never saw it during our training trip. Now Jiraiya did not get to where he is by being stupid. He's quite devious and not above pushing buttons to get information. And Tamari made such an easy target. He is not stupid. And for your information, he's a wonderful cook, much better than my brothers or me. His cakes are so good I ate one by myself and had a tummy ache for the rest of. She trailed off at the end and glared at the two older people, one who was guffawing without shame, the other who was biting her lip, trying not to laugh at the poor girl. Tsunade was able to rein in her laughter, just barely, when Tamari huffed and crossed her arms like a child. Now, Tamari, don't pout. We were just teasing you. Although, it seems you've fallen prey to Naruto's natural charms. Natural charms? Tsunade smirked and folded her hands in front of her face. Why, yes, it's the same reason Hinata found him irresistible for years. He just has a way with people when you actually get to know him. If you look beyond his bubbly exterior and see that he's actually an insecure individual who just wants to be loved, it makes knowing him all the more fulfilling, because you're helping him just by being there. Tamari sat and pondered on that. It was true that the more time she spent with Naruto, the more he opened up to her. But that was everybody in general. She cocked an eyebrow in surprise when the two older ninja in front of her got serious all of a sudden. As far as your date with Naruto, let me make it clear that if you intend to harm him in any way or get his hopes up and then dash them like glass on rocks, we will personally end you. Do you understand? Temari nodded dumbly. Bit overprotective, aren't you? Not in the least. That boy is my godchild, and even though I'm not the best parental figure, I still try to look after him. Jiraiya gave her a perverted leer and Tamari was immediately wary. Although I must say, the boy has impeccable taste. You are a delicious young thing. Once Jiraiya's screams couldn't be heard over the distance Tsunade had flung him, she turned back to her desk and put her face in her hands. Why, oh why, do I put up with that idiot in this village? Tamari could only nod in silent agreement. After nearly a week in Konoha, the kunoichi was happy to get back to her native land. She loved the atmosphere of Konoha. It was peaceful and the scents of the different flowers were intoxicating, but the winds of the desert and the warmth of the sun on her skin always made her feel at home. She wondered idly as she walked what the rest of her bunch was up to. Gaara was more than likely up to his ears in paperwork, Kankuro was probably playing with his dolls, and Naruto should have been able to teach the children all about hand signs by now and maybe gotten them started on Kawarimi. Her smile widened when she remembered that she had a date with him. She looked at the position of the sun and it was still early morning. At her rate of travel, she'd arrive back in Suna in the morning. If she was lucky, maybe she could catch one of Naruto's lectures and see how he was still doing with the students. Listening to those lectures of his was a good way to pass the time. The boy had such a hypnotic voice and the way he passionately made sure the kids understood was so cool. Yeah, she'd definitely try to catch his lecture. As she sat in her hotel room, in the town right outside the Suna border, she wondered about her past life and why she'd never had a love interest. It hadn't been for lack of wanting, but with Gaara's reputation she'd never had a guy brave enough to approach her. Shikamaru did, but that was purely out of duty and he knew that Naruto could stop Gaara if he tried anything. Her reputation as a tough bitch hadn't helped either, but then, you garner that when you're a Suna kunoichi. It just comes with the headband. She sighed when she thought of her past. Everything she had at the moment was thanks to that blonde idiot and he didn't think anything of it. He was so clueless as to just how much he changed people he met. To him, Gaara was just another person that was lonely. He wasn't a soulless killer, he was just another who had been driven to the brink of insanity and needed someone to help him. But that was everyone he came across. Naruto was totally incapable of helping himself, however. He lived to make others happy. That thought made her frown. He was the epitome of the Jinchurikis. He sacrificed himself to make others happy. And she was going to change that. Even if things didn't work out between them, she wouldn't let him throw away his happiness just so he could sit on the sidelines and watch as everyone else laughed and loved together. Temari's sleep had been fitful. Her thoughts were consuming her and this wasn't what she wanted, especially before a big date. Or a little date at least. She wanted to have fun, and with Naruto, that was a very big possibility. Of course, since it was Naruto, there was also the prospect that her evening would end with her beating the hell out of him. Either way, at least her evening wouldn't be boring. Tamari didn't even bother stopping at the gates of Suna. She flashed her pass, although it wasn't necessary since everyone knew who she was and looked up at the sky. Perfect. If Naruto still had his schedule, then she'd just catch the beginning of his lecture. Gaara wouldn't mind much. She slid beside the building and peeked around the corner. Good. Naruto and the kids had just finished their morning run and would soon be done with their calisthenics. Then, lecture time. Deciding there was no need to hide, she leaned against the building and watched as her fellow blonde led the children through some stretches. She was reminded of her own education watching them all. Of course, her father being Kazekage led to her having a private tutor in Baki, along with her brothers. She hadn't had much interaction with kids her own age and that hurt. But seeing all these young ones trying made her smile. She watched as they all sat in a semicircle around Naruto. Showtime. Naruto had been having a good week. The kids' training was coming along nicely and they hadn't complained when he suggested they study history in their spare time. To him it wasn't important, but then again, it never hurt to study past battles and apply it to your current strategy. It never hurt to learn anything, and that was something he tried to impart to his students. Jiraiya was a perfect example of a ninja never stopping learning. The old hermit was fascinated with his Oroku no Jutsu and tried multiple times to use it, but to no avail. It didn't mean he stopped learning though. Naruto looked out over his students and beamed them a smile. He still refused to learn their names, but he was quite proud of them. The other academy teachers had requested that he alert them when he was about to give a lecture, for what purpose Naruto didn't know. He made a few cage bunshin to go and tell the teachers he was ready, and that's when he saw Tamari. Several of the younger kunoichi saw her as well and were excited to see the sister of the Kage and a powerful Junin in her own right. He smirked and motioned for her to come over. Tamari walked over as smoothly as she could, trying to make it seem like she was uninterested while trying to swing her hips as seductively as she could while being subtle. The kids wouldn't pick up on the body language, but Naruto sure as hell did. He'd hung around a perverted ninja too much not to notice that walk. He didn't let it faze him too long though, and he smiled at his housemate. "Hello Tamari. Come to see the crop of students. Actually, I've come to listen to one of your infamous lectures. They've gained quite a reputation and I want to hear at least one." "Okay. I didn't know they were that popular. I have to wait for the other teachers though. They wanted me for something. Hang around and I'll take you to lunch." Many of the students began to catcall at his offer and were immediately shushed by a stern glare from their teacher. Tamari blushed slightly at the insinuation but caught herself enough to offer her own glare at the kids and walk back to her position at the wall, muttering about stupid brats. Naruto wasn't sure if that was aimed at his students or at him. After a few more minutes, the other teachers all came out with their students and sat behind Naruto's own. Temari quirked an eyebrow at the audience he had. Surely, his lectures weren't that great. They were good, but to empty the school just to listen to one. That was unheard of. She watched with slight trepidation as Urameshi Kari approached Naruto with a smile. "We're ready when you are, Naruto-san." Naruto looked at her perplexed. He truly didn't know what was going on. "Ready for what? Why did you all request I get you before my lecture?" "Why? Because we wanted our students to listen to it. And it might give us some pointers so we can spice up our own lectures. Just be yourself and lecture about the subject you had in store for your students. Do us proud." Naruto gulped and straightened his back. He'd never had an audience of this size. It was one thing to preach to his own students, it was quite another to lecture to impressionable students who were the responsibility of others. He turned back to Tamari and she gave him a reassuring smile and waved her hand in a circular motion, beckoning for him to begin. He sighed and turned back to the crowd. "Let me first thank all of you for taking time out of your schedules to come and hear what I have to say. I hope that I live up to your expectations. For those students who don't know me, I am Uzumaki Naruto, container of the Kyuubi. I am a former resident of Konoha, but I am now a Sunanin. It is my pleasure to speak to you today. I would like to speak to you all about loyalty to one's village and comrades today." Temari's eyes flew wide open. "Oh yes, this will be most interesting. Perhaps I should send for Gaara." There was no need. As if on cue, her brother appeared at her side. He nodded to her and turned his attention to his best friend. "I come from a village that espouses teamwork and loyalty above all else. And if I do say so myself, Konoha is pretty damn good at sticking to its guns. But there are glaring instances of shinobi going against that creed. I used to have a teammate by the name of Uchiha Sasuke, a holder of the Sharingan. We hated each other, but over time we began to get closer. His older brother wiped out his clan and he wanted to kill him. Sasuke would do anything to gain power to kill him, even if it meant selling his soul and betraying his village. I grew up with no one loving me, no one taking care of me. Sasuke had it all. People doting all over him, teachers lining up to take him as a pupil, a large inheritance, but he didn't care for any of it. As an Uchiha, he thought he was entitled to those things. Everything was given to him. I don't agree with that and I never have. There is a subtle grace to learning something, attaining it the hard way. It makes you appreciate what you have more. Being taught means someone has a vested interest in you and your welfare. Being taught means you are worthwhile and therefore, you are loyal to that person because they take interest in you. I had a teacher in Konoha like that. I was the dead last, a word I hate and loathe with all my being. I hate the word prodigy, I hate the word genius. I had a teacher who didn't subscribe to that either and he has my undying loyalty because he took an interest in me. Not much of one at first, but enough to show me that I was important. That I wasn't a nobody. I was Uzumaki Naruto and I meant something. Then came my next teacher. He wasn't as one of the laziest people I've ever met. He didn't want to be a teacher and only passed us because we somehow overcame his expectations and actually tried to help one another. One of those who espoused teamwork over everything. But aside from chakra control, he never taught me anything. But I was loyal to him because he noticed me. He wasn't the best person in the world but he actually called me by my name. He didn't call me names. But then he cast me aside to a different teacher that didn't want me. And my trust in him was shattered. But I still wanted acceptance and so my loyalty stood. Then my substitute teacher lost a one-sided fight with my master. I call him master because he is the only true teacher I've ever had. Jiraiya of the Sannin is my master. I'd never admit that to his face of course, but I am loyal to him without question. It's been said that I would do anything to help my friends and that is true. I'd fight the Shinigami himself if I thought it would save my precious people. Notice that I never once said that I was loyal to Konoha. I was loyal to the people in it. That village never gave me a damn thing and yet I still wanted to protect the people. You'd think that, it being one of their Yondaimi's final wishes, that the people of Konoha would see me as a hero and not as a monster. But that is the fate of a Jinchuriki, to be hated and reviled, even as we struggle to maintain our humanity in the face of adversity. It's been said that a person is smart. You can tell an individual something and if they're given adequate time to weigh what they hear, they can form a rational opinion. People are dumb, stupid, ignorant animals and together, they can bring even the most virtuous and righteous of men to their knees. Listen to me when I say it is good to be loyal to your village. It is your home and you should always protect it with everything you have. But without your precious people, a village is just a collection of buildings, a place where people live and sleep, and it will never be a home to you. But, love just one person and a village of enemies can become a sanctuary of the heart. Suddenly Naruto felt very heavy. He sat on the ground and crossed his legs. He sighed before starting again. That's not to say that loyalty and friendship are always rewarded. Loyalty is different from devotion. Devotion is blindly following after something and never seeing the bad in it. I did that when I was younger with one of my teammates. I chased her and was oblivious to the fact of how pathetic it made me seem. But still I protected my teammates against insurmountable odds and never once received a thank you. And despite my bubbly facade on the surface, I was quite bitter on the inside. It seemed that no matter what I did, my loyalties would never be returned. And then Sasuke defected to Orochimaru. The same man who tried to destroy our home, all because of a promise of power. The price of said power was his body and mind and yet he didn't care. As long as his brother died. And so our bonds were broken. And like an idiot, I kept trying to reshape those bonds and bring him back. I couldn't accept that he would willingly betray his village. And I had made a promise to my crush and I couldn't break that bond either. That was how my loyalties lay. But of course, My story is complicated and there are many variables that I haven't brought to the surface. The point of the lecture is that loyalty takes both sides being true to one another. Trust is the key. If you trust your comrades with your life and they can trust you with theirs, then you have their loyalty and you have theirs. If you can trust your village never to betray you, and you show that you will never betray it, you both are loyal to one another. But loyalty is a two-way street and both sides have to be willing to walk it. Remember when you leave today, that trust and loyalty are some of the hardest things to attain and some of the easiest things to break. One incident is all it takes to completely shatter whatever bonds you had with those precious to you. And that trust and loyalty may never be rebuilt. And if it is, it will take a long time. That's a sad truth, but it is a truth nonetheless. I want all of you to think on this. Naruto looked around and all eyes were on him. The children sat in awe at the frank discussion and even the teachers were impressed. Naruto sighed and smiled at the throng. Sometimes he felt so old. Remember to protect those precious to you. I say that quite a lot, but it is a rule to live by. Remain true to your ideals and your loyalty will never be questioned. And if anyone ever questions your loyalty, work twice as hard to prove you are the better man. Do not sink to their level, questioning a fellow ninja's integrity. If there is one thing I cannot stand, it is a traitor to one's village and friends. If any of you ever turn on our home. At this, Naruto channeled a fraction of the Kyuubi's power to change his appearance and give his voice that demonic edge. Everyone in attendance, except the Sand siblings, were frightened at the sense of power. When he wanted a point across, he'd get the point across. I will have no mercy upon you. I will request to be the one to hunt you down. All of you children are vital to this village's survival. Do not let visions of grandeur and false power lure you into betrayal. Do not fall into the trappings of others more foolish than you. Naruto let the demonic chakra fade and watched as the audience caught their breath. To their credit, the kids looked awestruck. Perhaps, there was hope for him here if they were so understanding. I'm sorry if I frightened you, but you must understand that I will not tolerate traitors. You were taught to be ninja, the best of the best, in this village and you should never abandon it. If things don't go as you wish, try to change it. Don't run from your problems. Face them head on and I'll always be proud of you. Now I'm going to lunch and I suggest you do too. I'm starving. Whatever tension was in the air dissipated immediately. The teachers all chuckled and ushered the kids back inside. Naruto strode to the Sand siblings and put his hands on his hips while giving them a foxy grin. Well, how'd I do? Gaara, HMMPHED, and nodded his head. It had been a good speech. Tamari smirked at him and crossed her arms under her chest. Was the demonic chakra necessary? Some of them might have pissed their pants. They need to understand the dangers of running off and betraying the village. If someone had threatened Sasuke like that, I don't think he ever would have left. Gaara sighed and shook his head. In any event, you two come to my office and we'll have lunch before you return to your class. Naruto. Temari, you have to give me your report anyway. Gaara shunshined away, leaving the two blondes. Temari threw an arm around Naruto's neck and grinned. And after class, you and I have to discuss the particulars of our date. I hope you've been saving up while I've been gone. I have expensive tastes. She too disappeared. Naruto stood blinking for a moment before sighing. Why did I ever agree to that? There was no answer as he shunshined away. But the wind seemed to carry a lilting laughter on it at the Jinchuriki's plight.